r/AskReddit. What's the biggest fuck up you ever made that was fixed before anyone knew about it? When I was 15, I tried to bake a carrot cake, and I think I misread how much carrots to put and ended up with maybe 10x the amount of carrots you're supposed to make. Whatever I did, it became the mushiest cake ever. Guests were already coming, and in a stroke of genius, I told my mom's friends, since two of you are bringing your babies along, I made it extra soft for them. I also reduced the sugar and increased the carrots to make it healthier. My parents' friends kept going on about what a thoughtful, sweet kid I am, baking a cake specially with babies in mind. The weird thing was, the babies were hooked on the cake. One of the moms kept calling my mom for the next few months asking if I have time to bake that cake again. I did try to replicate it but I just couldn't, so I kept pretending I was too busy. I met her kid again when she was 11 and apparently, one of her earliest memories was eating that cake. Her mom told me I was the one who baked it for her, so she was really excited to meet me, because in her memories, it's some mind-blowingly awesome cake that no cake has ever compared to. I had to burst her bubble and tell her what really happened. I accidentally sent a dick pic meant for my girlfriend to a group chat I have with my 3 sisters. Luckily my service went down right before the picture was sent. Was so relieved to see a message saying my message was not sent. Would you like to retry? No I would not. If porn taught me anything, you missed a chance for an easy foursome. Always growing up my mom told me not to overload the dryer. It was one of those fancy expensive ones and she didn't want it to break. For years she said this and I never took her seriously. Then one time after I moved out they had me house sit for a weekend. I brought literally all my laundry and washed it in a single load. Stupid I know. Ended up breaking the dryer. They were coming home the next day, Sunday. I went full repairman and took the entire thing apart, or at least getting the whole front off and getting into the meat of the thing. Turned out I snapped the band. Called everywhere and no one had the band. Ended up finding this random store downtown that specialized in washer and dryer repairs. Went in and bought a band similar to what I needed. Went home, put it on, and put everything back together. Took up my entire Saturday. It's been 3 years and my mom still doesn't know. Never tell her to. Or any future problems of that dryer become your problems. Source: fixing computers for everyone who knows I'm better at computers than they are SMH. When I was 17 I worked for the city's newspaper and one of my jobs was to add up all the orders for the next day's papers so they could print what they needed. Once I made a huge error and they printed off thousands of extra papers. I was very lucky, they covered up for me, quietly disposed of the extra papers and didn't tell the boss. I was just asked very nicely to never, ever do it again. I very nearly injected a premature baby that had Down syndrome with 10 times the amount of Lasix I was supposed to give him. I had put the decimal in the wrong place when I did the maths on the dose. That baby would almost certainly have died if I'd given it to him. I had the liquid drawn up in the syringe and had the syringe actually in the port ready to push through before I looked inside the chamber and realized how uncharacteristically full it seemed. Pediatric IV doses of anything are simply tiny. I was supposed to give him 0.1 mls, and nearly gave him 1.0 mls. I needed a very large cup of tea after that. Instead of charging a customer's credit card for $150, I charged $15,000 and it went through. I ran up to a private office and immediately called the issuing bank. Told them what happened and they made it as if nothing happened. When I was in high school, I was dating this guy for a few months. I decided to send him a nude while I was getting ready for school. I took the picture, attached a detailed sext, even though the most we had ever done was over the clothes touching, and hit send and finished up getting ready. 5 minutes later, I'm in the backseat of my mom's car and I opened my phone to check for a reply. I realized I sent it to my mom instead. I silently freaked out before I realized she obviously hadn't seen it yet or else everything wouldn't be so calm right now. I saw her purse on the console between the front seats, phone peeking out with a text notification. I grabbed it as quickly as I could. She asked what I was doing and I just said I'm checking to see if I'm getting texts. I deleted it, triple checked, and deleted all evidence from my own phone too. I'm almost 24 now and I still am super cautious anytime I send anything even slightly questionable to anyone. I won't text my sister something with a curse word in it unless I check the recipient box twice. My sophomore year of college I was failing 3 of my 4 classes near the end of the semester due to too much partying and not enough working. I was able to drop 2, fail 1, and pick up a flexible learning course that counted for that semester, but I had 16 weeks to complete. Had that not all worked out, I would have lost my full ride and probably would have had to move back home to the community college. I still had to appeal my scholarship and was on academic probation for a year, but I got back on track and just completed my master's. I borrowed my brother-in-law's ute while moving some things. I accidentally filled it up with diesel because I stupidly assumed it was a diesel engine. Definitely sounded like one. Had to get the thing towed and flushed out that night, but luckily no damage was done. Returned it with no one the wiser, but could have been pretty bad if I had mixed the fuel the other way around. I got my parents' car impounded before going to work. I managed to find the people who called to tow it. I found the guy who towed the car itself. He gave me a ride to the impound lot. It cost me around $500 to get it back. No one ever knows. Being a young inexperienced driver, my mother asked me to move my sister's car so she could back out. Well, 14-year-old me goes casually walking to my sister's car. I get in and crank it up with no problem, check my mirrors, and buckled up like a good driver. That's when shit got real. I put the car in reverse, slowly backing up until my heel slips, causing me to put all my weight onto the gas pedal, sending this 2001 Monte Carlo flying out of the driveway, across the street, and into the neighbor's yard. Luckily, in the craziness, I was able to brake and come to a complete stop. Realizing I was okay, I laughed my ass off, but then fear set in as I got out to inspect for damage. And holy shit, there was none. Nothing knocked loose and the vehicle ran smoothly. So I casually moved my sister's car out of the neighbor's yard and off to the side where I intended to go. And to my surprise, no one in the house heard it, and I went about the rest of the day thinking I was a sly dumb mother ducker. I'm a freelance app developer. I was preparing to submit an app to the store for this client. The build was ready, and I was just about to upload it. I'll just install it and do a final check, I think, and I'm glad I was paranoid about it. The app name was something like Sigdlug. My cat used to have a bad habit of jumping on my keyboard when I wasn't looking. He actually managed to send a Skype message to a client once, full of gibberish. I was in the process of training him that he's not allowed on the desk. I can only imagine what my client's reaction would have been if the app got released with that name. My mom is a very soft-spoken, gentle woman. Only heard her curse once in my life. Very old-fashioned, super kind. So innocent, she's amazing. So one night my friend and I rode one bicycle about 10 miles to go to this girl's house, taking turns sitting on the handlebars. We had a reason for wanting to go, but we didn't stay long. So after our long arduous journey, we set out on our return trip. Not 5 minutes after embarking, a cop pulls up and stops us. It's around 4-5 in the morning and I hadn't even thought about curfew being a thing. He called up both our parents, and my mom came to pick us up. He wasn't able to reach my friend's parents, so he left a message on the machine. Knowing this was the inevitable, forced termination of our friendship, I convinced my mother to drive to his house on a covert mission. He lived out in the boonies, so when we arrived at his house, she had to turn off her lights and drive stealthily down his country road of a driveway. He snuck inside while his parents slept, deleted the message off the machine, and we escaped scot-free. Till this day I still can't believe my mother did that for us. Super OG shit, totally uncharacteristic of her. My friend and I are still in contact decades later, even though he lives in Thailand. Thanks, Mom. Late one morning I was going 68 miles per hour in a 35 miles per hour zone. Saw the cop on the side of the road and pulled over before he could even start his car or get his lights on. Came up to the window, said he's never seen someone pull themselves over and that he wished I ran because that would be more fun. 30 seconds later he gave me a verbal warning and sent me on my way. Lucky shot. I thought I was the only one who ever considered doing something like that. 6 months ago or so I was in far left lane doing 80 in a 65 and passed a cop on the right shoulder. saw him emerge from the shoulder in my mirror. Accepted my fate and started to pull off the road, except he shot right past me and on down the freeway. I technically invaded Iran. I was serving in the Navy during the War on Terror, on my second deployment, and was in navigation. Our captain was a little eccentric, and he liked fucking with people. So one night he came on the bridge in his robe and fuzzy slippers and asked me to plot out 12 nautical miles from Iran, which marks the shift from territorial to international waters. My mission for the rest of the night was to ride that line. Either to let them see us on radar just outside of their waters, or just to give me something to do for shits and giggles. So for the next few hours I was advising course corrections and doing everything I could to keep us close to but not inside that line. Except for the little slip up of forgetting to account for drift once. Whoops. So for about 10 minutes or so the US Navy had technically invaded Iran's territorial waters. They apparently didn't notice, and I corrected it quickly. In truth it's probably not nearly as big of a deal as it sounds, but at the time 21-year-old me was fucking sweating bullets, thinking I'd just declared war on a foreign country or something. I spilled red wax all over cream carpet when I was about 16. Then carefully cleaned it all up using printer paper and an iron. You lay the paper over the wax, iron on low heat, and it transfers the wax from the carpet to the paper. What made it harder was that my mum, one of those really particular, house-proud people, was napping in the next room the whole time. Had to do all of it without waking her up. When we moved out, there was a tiny stain still there, but she never picked up on it until then. One day after a night of heavy drinking, I woke up to find I had shat myself whilst I was asleep. I was absolutely horrified as you can imagine. I quickly showered and stripped the bed, taking extreme care to remove any trace. I was just finished when my boyfriend came home. He didn't suspect a thing. He could smell the poo-poo in the air. I got one similar for ya. I once drove 10 hours to see a girl I barely knew in Washington, D.C. We ended up dating. We went out on the town and got pretty drunk and had a great time. We went home and things started heating up in the bedroom. I figured we were gonna do it. You know, it. I had to pee, so I went to the bathroom. However, while in the bathroom I got incredibly nervous that I was going to disappoint this beautiful girl by coming too fast. I had a dop kit with a toothbrush and such, that was in the bathroom. It also had a flask in it. So I chugged the whole flask of Grey Goose. Almost puked, didn't, and then brushed my teeth and resumed activities. I hung dong on her, it was great, and we went to sleep. But then I woke up about 3 hours later having peed the bed. No. I panicked. I rolled her to one side, tucked the sheet under her, and rolled her over it and slipped it out from under her. Luckily she was in a dorm, so it had those plasticine mattresses that are in every dorm, so it was easily wiped. I took the sheets and wet stuff and stumbled around, quite literally, the whole dormitory looking for the washer and dryer. I managed to wash and dry the sheets, and make the bed under her without her ever knowing. It was a great trip.